Okay, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, February 21st, 2017, at about 9:02 a.m. Go ahead and call the roll.
Let the record reflect that Commissioners Glazier, Hara, and Ninberg are present, and you have a quorum.
Good, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead with the flag salute and a moment of silence.
Join me in a moment of silence in honor of past and present members of the Los Angeles Fire Department who devoted their lives to the protection of our community. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead with commission comments. Any comments? Start at the end of the table. Dr. Hara?
Well, actually, the three of us were present at the promotional event at Hotchkiss, where we also honored firefighter Reddy, who was promoted to captain, and his son received his badge, which I thought was a phenomenal event. And although there weren't a lot of women promoted, I was happy to see promoted battalion chief was a woman of color, Chris Larson, and the event was so many people were being promoted and so many people were in attendance that the parking lot was totally full.
Thank you. Yes, I too thought it was fantastic that we had the first ever African American female in the rank of battalion chief. And that is historic, and especially apropos because it is African History Month. So I do want to talk. I took a training that Nikki Bridawi presented. She got together for chiefs. It's going to go to captains. It was for domestic violence and human trafficking training. And I will say, I was extremely impressed. And I thought it was very impactful. You guys are, I took a couple notes, you guys are the largest ever fire department to ever have this training. And that means you're leaders in domestic violence and human trafficking training. Now, these are, what was interesting and I didn't realize is that 1 in 3 women in the ER are victims of domestic violence. And with the transports that we do every day, it's essential that we have this training and that we can have an impact, you know, and understanding how to treat these victims because it's a psychological issue. So I thought it was really great as far as human trafficking training is concerned. I'm not proud of the fact that Los Angeles has the highest rate of child sex trafficking in the United States. And it is a growing problem that will soon surpass drugs. So the fact that we took this training and realizing and understanding that we need this training, I want to commend the chief, I want to commend the department. And I also want to say that on a personal note, I spoke with a few chiefs and almost universally it transformed the way they looked at the problem. Instead of looking at the problem as these are criminals, these are young girls, and the average age of entry is 11 to 13. And understanding that they're psychologically enslaved. And so when I talked to some of the chiefs about it, they said that they, in fact, it literally transformed the way they saw this problem. And LAFD has access to this that LAPD couldn't even dream of. So I know I'm going on for a long time, but it's essential, and I'm really pleased that the department's committed and they're taking a leadership role in the country in this. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. I agree with everything that's been said. Ditto. On both counts, both the promotional ceremony and on the training, both things were fantastic. Okay, report of the Fire Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. On February 7th, 8th, and 9th, myself and a contingency of LAFD members attended Firehouse World in San Diego. That's an annual conference. We believe it's a very worthwhile conference, a lot of important topics, and some of the things that we sat through are very compelling, and we're looking at ways to implement them within our department. More on that coming. On February 12th, we had the second annual Run to Remember event. Started and finished at the Grove. What's different this year is that we had the day before the race bib pickup. All the entrants went to Hotchkins to pick up the race bib. So we had an audience there of 5,000 people plus their guests to look at all the various booths as well as a fire department presence at the event. I'm happy to report that we had a large group of LAFD members run the 10K and the half marathon, and I'll leave it at that. And then, sadly, on February 13th, we had funeral services for David Moorman out in the valley, the far end of the valley. Unfortunately for us, we're very good at putting on funerals. It's a very tragic event. He's a relatively young man. He left behind 2 kids and a wife. It was a very nice service, and we're supporting the Moorman family as we move forward. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, we had a press conference at Fire Station 4. We highlighted 2 young ladies that were drowning survivors. One interesting note is that one of the young ladies, this was from 15 years ago, so she's 16 years old now. The other female was 18 months old. That just happened a few months ago. Both were success stories. Our people responded to the incident location, administered CPR to support the efforts. The dispatcher, who was given CPR instructions over the phone, transported to the hospital where the hospital staff took over, and both young ladies are alive and well today. They got a lot of media coverage. We pushed the need to know CPR. A very, very positive story. And then, as was mentioned previously, on February 16th, we had our promotional badge presentation. There was 82 members promoted to 8 different ranks. It's the largest number in the recent history of the LAFD, and we thought it was a good time to do that. We were past the holidays. We're ahead of brush season. We have 2 recruit classes graduating in the next 2 months. So we made the decision to go ahead and promote. It helps us, on a lot of different levels. Most importantly, we wanted consistent supervision at the fire stations where we have very high amount of probationary members. We need to have consistent supervision, and we've addressed that. When these next 2 recruit classes graduate, I look at this as a tipping point in our staffing situation. Our worst case, we were at 343 vacancies back in the summer of 15. We're now, after these 2 classes graduate, we'll be at 155. So we've made tremendous improvement, and we have more classes coming after that. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. All right, verbal reports on significant incidents. Any takers?
Commissioners, Chief Terrazas, Julie, Letitia, good morning. My name is Joe Castro, Chief Deputy Commander of Emergency Operations. This past week, as I'm sure is no surprise, we had predictions of extreme weather, and this causes us to enter into a series of discussions both internally and externally with other emergency response stakeholders to determine what, if anything, would be our emergency operations augmentation. This particular day we had a storm that was predicted to be the largest in terms of rainfall over the course of the last decade, and consequently the discussion moved into the decision to staff 4 swiftwater rescue teams. Our swiftwater rescue teams are highly specialized and trained members that enable us to be significantly more effective, particularly in a water-based rescue, where we actually have to go into the water to rescue a citizen that has been swept away or otherwise is in extreme danger. 4 is the highest level, and it's predicated on, the discussion is predicated upon establishing a numerical value to the threat, and it's based on the saturation level, the predicted level, the rainfall per hour, and it's a fairly detailed discussion. We were successful in staffing those up without any really significant water-based rescues. Subsequently, on Saturday evening, we received a request from the Callaway-esque command post regarding the prediction of torrential floods in the northern part of the state. The department has a Callaway-esque swiftwater apparatus that is paid for by the state that we received a request to staff that. And as of Sunday afternoon, we sent a swiftwater rescue team of 14 members and an agency rep as a battalion chief up into Northern California, where they are pre-positioned right now to assist the state in any rescues that they may incur because of the impending rain. That concludes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any report by the medical director? Oh, sorry. Chief
Good morning, City Attorney, Fire Chief, Commissioners Glazer, Nimberg, and Hara. Thank you for the opportunity. John Drake, Operations Valley Bureau, Assistant Bureau Commander. I'll report on some of the events that occurred over the last time period, but first I'd like to echo your same sentiments, Commissioner Nimberg. Having gone to that domestic violence training, I too had an epiphany as well. I wondered how its application really applied to us, but it changed my perspective tremendously after being there. So thank you for facilitating that. What I'd like to address briefly is some of the significant events that we've had recently in the valley due to the inclement weather and the downpours. On February 17th, our resources responded to 5300 North Sepulveda Boulevard for a male victim in the gutter that in 6 to 8 inches of water. What had transpired was electrical wires, and due to a large tree hitting it, caused the car and the water in the immediate area to be charged. Engine 102, Swiftwater 88 initiated mitigation efforts and de-energized it by cutting electrical wires and extricating a patient. RA-39 transported. Unfortunately, the patient was later pronounced at the hospital. But it was a collaborative effort between DWP, LAPD, and the LAPD as well. Another incident occurred at 5600 North Woodley, where we had one engine, just Battalion 10 and Command 42. This was one of those risk assessment and communication successes where the Sepulveda Dam needed to be shut down, which was causing more problems with the water that we were having. Army Corps of Engineer and CHP helped us with that. Fortunately, there were no injuries or patients due to that one. Let's move on to San Fernando Road, where at 8654 San Fernando, our resources responded with 3 engines, a truck, a rescue ambulance, and an 800 BLS ambulance. Initially, it was reported 10 cars that were stuck, and the reports we had was as many as 15 people were extricated from those cars. Again, a collaborative effort with LAPD, DOT, street maintenance, and our CERT members. At 4245 North Laurel Canyon Boulevard, there was a sinkhole. I think many of us saw this on the news, and I went to that and took some pictures of it, but I thought I didn't need to because there's certainly a lot of media sensationals going on it. It was a significant hole. We had 4 engines, 2 trucks, 2 rescue ambulances, and a BLS rescue ambulance respond to that incident as well. Engine 86, in my opinion, took some very proactive measures and really jeopardized their safety and welfare and need to be recognized for their efforts as well. They deployed a 10-foot roof ladder adjacent to the sinkhole and then descended a 20-foot extension ladder down to the vehicle to remove the female driver of the one vehicle. And this was not 6 feet. This was a significantly deep sinkhole. Anyway, street maintenance came in and took care of the balance of that, and everything worked out great with that. I think we didn't adhere to all of our USAR type things, but it was certainly, I think, appropriate effort by our members. 18629 Topham was another large incident, about a 75 by 100 commercial building where we had a well involved, and there's under investigation right now. The positive thing that happened at this building, this 2-story commercial fire, was that our initial resources recognized the risk analysis profile in this and went defensive immediately. This building was well involved, and so no members were hurt. None of the exposures were harmed in any significant way, and the resolution of that was appropriate. That concludes my report on emergency incidents in Operations Valley Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you. like we get the medical director next. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Mark Eckstein, Medical Director. Significant EMS incidents since our last meeting. And Chief Drake stole some of my thunder, some of the significant incidents in the Valley. Not surprised, we also had some significant rain-related incidents elsewhere in the city. On February 11th, in 64's first in, rollover traffic on the Harbor Freeway at Century. Total of 5 patients, 2 of whom need to be extricated, subsequently transported to area hospitals. Also on the 11th and 73's first in, also a physical rescue with a car into the side of a building, resulting in the transport of 5 patients, including 2 immediates. Last night at around 9 p.m. in Fire Station 13's first in, also a physical rescue traffic with 6 patients, 2 of whom were trapped, all transported to area hospitals. And then again, to always conclude on a positive note, great save on February 17th. Engine Rescue 64 down in the Watts area responded on a fairly young 52-year-old gentleman complaining of chest pain. The call was processed with our TDS dispatch system in only 35 seconds. Resources, the paramedic ambulance 64 got there in 4 minutes and acquired a 1280 kg. The gentleman was showing signs of a massive heart attack, also known as a STEMI. He then went into ventricular fibrillation. The paramedics defibrillated this gentleman, got pulses back, transported him to Harbor UCLA, where he went right to the cardiac cath lab for stenting and definitive care. So great save, and again, all the links in the chain of survival were strong. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, move next to presentations.
Good morning, Commissioners, Fire Chief Terrazas, City Attorney Letitia, Eric Scott, Fire Captain, Paramedic, and Public Information Officer. Today we'd like to commend and recognize a fine group of your firefighters. They had, for their technical experience as well as their courage and commitment for a week-long operation at the Seaview incident in the Mount Washington area. These members overcame multiple challenges, not just extinguishing a significant fire, but they had to coordinate with many city entities during a prolonged and systematic search for a deceased homeowner. On October 20th, 2016, these members responded to a structure fire at the 4000 block of Seaview Avenue. When they arrived on scene, they had multiple challenges. This was an immense 9,000 square foot, 3-story descending hillside home with fire that was quickly spreading along the home, but also to adjacent residences as well as to the dried brush. The compartmentalization of this residence made getting to the seat of the stubborn fire very difficult and prolonged. This actually became a major emergency fire requiring 150 firefighters total on scene. Ultimately, this became an enormous hazardous maze requiring an arduous search for a missing elderly homeowner inside. So during this complex fire, it was required to have various important tasks that these members here had performed, not just to confine and extinguish the fire, but to ensure proper water pressure for a hilltop fire, also to manage an abundance of emergency radio communications. There was weakened floors and walls with the potential of collapse on multiple levels, a systematic search and rescue for victims inside that burning home, and later even utilizing canine teams. They also had to ensure the downhill residences were not flooded by thousands of gallons of water. They had to evacuate the home actually directly beneath and then eventually work with American Red Cross. And then the medical component, there was 2 injuries. There was a 74-year-old woman that suffered smoke inhalation, as well as a 32-year-old woman along with her dog that was rescued through a window. There's additional challenges of electrical wires down, exploding propane tanks, and then also keeping the concerned public informed throughout this week. So these talented members here worked continuously for more than 165 hours from the initial 911 call. During this whole time, they ensured firefighter safety. And despite the diligent search, the burned remains of a homeowner would not be found until 3 months later by a demolition crew. But a picture is worth 1,000 words. And fortunately, we do have Battalion Chief Kelly here, who was the operations section chief, with a brief PowerPoint to show you.
Good morning, Commissioner Glazer, Commissioner Nyberg, Commissioner Hara, Chief Terrazas, officers of the command staff. My name is Tim Kelly. I'm Battalion Chief, Battalion 5B Platoon. I'd like to, first of all, let you know that I'm extremely honored to represent these fine professionals here and to highlight the efforts of their efforts on the Seaview incident in the days following to recover the homeowner. I prepared a short PowerPoint presentation to hopefully give you guys a closer look of the scope of the incident and kind of detail the mission that they were facing on this incident. But before I get started, I'd like to say that there's acts of courage and service, extraordinary acts of courage and service going on every day in the fire service, and that for you to take your time today to recognize and publicly reflect on those efforts, I think shows tremendous leadership, and I certainly am grateful for that. And I know these people here are also grateful for that. So I'll get started with the PowerPoint presentation. This is a look at the Seaview incident post-fire, and this is actually at the last day that we ceased the operations, the recovery operations, so that's the way we left it for the demo company. But as Scott said, it's a 9,000 square foot descending hillside home, so 2 stories below grade level. Significant challenge, firefight, but coming into this as the operations section chief and managing the resources to recover the homeowner was significantly challenging, and I'll highlight some of those for you. But here's just a basic overview. The address of the incident was 4057 Seaview. Fire occurred on October 20th, and the recovery efforts essentially went from October 20th to the 27th. This was a multi-agency entity cooperation. These are all the stakeholders that were involved in the recovery efforts of the homeowner here. So you can read all of those. I was the operations commander on this. We had an IC in place, so we had significant organization structure filled out to manage this incident, but you can see all these here. I won't read every one of them, but give you a close look about what the USAR folks were dealing with in terms of searching this occupancy. So we had canine units from Los Angeles County assisting us with the search of this. These are human remains detection canines. They were brought in and basically were giving us the pinpointing locations where we were to start our search. But before we could do that, because the structure was compromised pretty much 360 around that whole structure, inside and out, to get into some of these places, to uncover some of the debris, the USAR folks had to get into these areas. And what you see there are some PowerTech shoring or struts that essentially are holding up compromised members of the structure, the floors, ceilings, walls, etc. This is the USAR folks that work here building shoring. So we had Department of Building and Safety engineers that were part of the team there, essentially right with me the whole time and with the folks here. And to stabilize the structure, they had to build out quite a bit of shoring on the outside as well as inside to complete our search. So this is what you're looking at. This particular portion of the building, the structural engineers were extremely concerned about this wall here that they're shoring up, because if that wall were to let go, it's holding up that Bravo side wall, which is about a 40-foot wall, and that would have toppled into the structure there and posed significant risk. So here's some more look at the structural engineers and our USAR folks shoring up the outside of that wall. And then we moved into crane operations to get down 30 feet, 40 feet below grade level. We weren't comfortable actually walking people into there because of the instability of the floors and the walls interior. So we cleared out as much as we could from an excavator from the top, and then we lowered personnel, these USAR personnel, in a crane down 30 feet below where the canines had pinpointed some of the debris where we thought the homeowner would be. So this was painstaking, arduous, and really risky work. As much as we tried to mitigate the hazards there, and we did do a thorough planning and oversight on that, we still had significant risks. And so we had these 2 cranes out here, 70-ton crane and a 40-ton crane, lowered our personnel in there, and they were debris or timbers and moving that out of the excavation site. And that's a look down in the hole over the side. That's what our members were doing, wrapping cable. And that particular officer there is Cat Beatty, who's here today. He's specialized on the job, but he's also heavy equipment operator, crane operator, so he's got a lot of technical expertise in this area, and so he was in charge of our heavy equipment group. He was the supervisor of that, but also he was doing work as well. So we moved tons of debris out of that pile and uncovered several spots that the canine dogs had located for us without any success. That was a particular challenge for our people because we're so mission-oriented and mission-driven, and the meticulous care that these people took to look for the homeowner to preserve, obviously, the dignity of the homeowner and kind of bring closure for the family and the friends of the homeowner. It was as if they were searching for like a life victim. So incredible work that they did. We had constant supervision and safety throughout the operational periods. They really extended from sunrise to sunset. And so what you're seeing here is Captain Kanabe. He was our USAR group supervisor, and then the gentleman in the USAR suit is Captain Henskin. He was our safety officer. So we had safety officers positioned all the way around this structure when we were working. There's a look at Captain Kanabe, one of the USAR members. And then we have rapid intervention crews. So these are the people that are standing by me in the event that something unforeseen happened and one of our people were actually in trouble, something came down on them and collapsed. These people were set up for rescuing our fire personnel. That's a contingency measure that we put in pretty much every place on every incident. And then this is Chief Castro. Chief Porter came out to the incident a few times and to really get a first-hand look at what we were dealing with and the complexity of the incident. And that's tremendous for the people that are out there doing the work every day to see the leadership out there and seeing the work that they're putting in. So the video I'm going to play here is a 40-second clip. It just gives you a better scope of what they were dealing with in terms of the search operation. Challenges that we face. So I highlighted three for you. So it's 9,000 square foot home, so 3,000 per floor. Compromised structure 360, you saw that. And the potential for collapse, as much as we tried to mitigate that, was present everywhere. And so we're constantly doing a risk analysis on putting our people in there. We know we're going for a recovery, so it was really required precise planning. And on the members' part, it was highly technical, arduous, and really, quite frankly, dangerous work. Operational periods, like I said, sunrise to sunset. So it required intense focus because they're working around heavy equipment, power tools. They have all kinds of hazards there. So the mental and physical endurance that required, the mental fortitude, and then, the exceptional physical condition that these people are in that allow them to do the job is quite frankly remarkable. And from my perspective, watching that, it's I'm in awe of watching these people work. The inherent risks, like I said, required precise planning, coordination, and execution of the tactical objectives that we set out. So here's our successes from my perspective. The tactical priorities and objectives we were completed as planned every single day and on schedule. And then when we fell behind schedule, the people that were working there made it a point to get us back on schedule by the end of the day. And that is something that should be recognized as well. 100% non-injury rate for all personnel there. That includes LAFD and every cooperating agency that was there. We had the coroners there. We had the canine people, the LA County heavy equipment people. We had like I said, it was preserving the dignity of the homeowner to the next spring closure for the family and friends. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions? Can I have all the personnel that are being recognized to come up here, please, and line up against the wall? Some of the members that were involved in the efforts here were unable to make it today due to prior commitments, but the personnel here that are attending, you'll see standing. Thank you.
A lot was said there. Let me start off with saying welcome to Captain Scott. Where are you, Cap? First day on the job. He's one of the 82 that were promoted. Welcome to the team up here on the 18th floor. Good job. But the men and women behind me exemplify what we do every day. They take risk, they manage risk, and they take the appropriate actions to get the job done. This was not your normal structure fire. A hillside home, 9,000 square feet, in imminent danger of collapsing. But they knew the importance of the mission, and they did it safely and professionally. And we thought it was appropriate that we recognize their efforts. And it's good to know that we have that skill set whenever we need it. So I thank the Commission for allowing us to bring our members before you. And I thank the group of people behind us for what you do every day. Congratulations. Now we'll take a group photo. There's so many of you. Let's see if we can do this. We'll figure out a way.
All right, thank you to all the members for that incredible effort on that incident. It's great to have you all down here. Okay, moving forward, going to move to our consent agenda items. I'll entertain a motion to adopt items 4A, adopt the recommendations for items 4A through 4I.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda is adopted. All right. That takes us to regular agenda item 5. Oh, wait, sorry. We have, okay, great. No, it's coming. Okay. 5A, report by the Department on Arson Counterterrorism Audit Report Update. I'm good. Yes. So, just so everyone knows, we're going to continue item 5B to the next meeting. That's the report by Department of Mods Discipline Philosophy. So that'll be postponed. And we will hear items 5A, C, and D, however. So why don't we go to 5A?
Good morning, Commissioners, Fire Chief Terrazas, City Attorney Leticia. My name is Robert Nelson. I'm the commander of the Arson Counterterrorism Section, and I'm here to update on the audit that the Independent Assessor's Office did. They did an audit, and it covered she wanted 5 objectives, and that's to revise our policies and procedures, to increase the quality of our investigations, to enhance our training, look at some supervisory oversight, make sure we have some policies in place to address that, and our backgrounds. In order to do that, she came up with 12 recommendations. We're here today to tell you that I believe that we've completed all 12 recommendations. One little caveat is the one thing that we were struggling with was our office procedures manual. And what we determined is that through a coalition of folks inside my office and outside, is we came up with the fact that we have created the office procedures manual was written 25 years ago when we had a management analyst. And since that time, we did not have arson procedure bulletins. And we've created 22 arson procedure bulletins, which covers the day-to-day operations of our section, which is kind of the governing body. But we also, in addition to that, we work very closely with the DA's office, and we utilize 2 manuals out of their office. And one of them is there's a search warrant manual, which part of that was in our office procedures manual, and also their investigations and prosecutions of arson. It's another manual that we use as a reference document. We also have 2 LOAs, one with the ATF and one with the LAPD, and that covers our use of force and some of our training standards. And then we also incorporate NFPA 1033, which is the standards for professional and arson investigators, and then 921, which is the guide that covers arson and explosive work. So all those documents combined, all those standalone documents, actually encompasses what we believe to be our office procedures manual, and it's really outlived. So it's the office procedures manual's kind of outlived its usefulness, and so it's no longer needed and it's no longer utilized. We queried our staff, which is 18 investigators, and find out how many people have actually used that in the last 10 years, and nobody's even looked at it because we have all these other standalone documents. So we believe that we've met the requirements of the independent assessor's recommendations, and we'd like to close the books on that and move forward. Unless there's any other recommendations, I think we've met the recommendations of the audit.
Questions? I have some questions, but go ahead. Any questions on this end?
Yes. So did you work with Sue Stengel on this as well? Just the bulletins?
We work very closely with Sue on every one of these recommendations. We spent a lot of time with her. She probably lived in our office for the first few months. She brings a lot of her insight, her value, her background, her training really allowed us to move and navigate forward. When I first took over the section, we realized that we had some issues we need to tighten up, and she really gave us kind of the horsepower and the insight and kind of the drive to really take it to the final end. We do, when we update our arson procedure bulletins, which I would say is probably at 90% of what we do, we try to send her a copy of it, get her insight, and make sure that we're heading in the right direction and get her and she always has good information that allows us to make sure that we're sitting in the right place. So she's been tremendous for us, and I think she's been a very big asset for us, and I think she's done a tremendous job to help us get to where we're at today. And I do believe that our section has made tremendous strides. We've made more change in the last 4 years there than we have probably in the last 25 years. I think that's a fair statement to say that. And I think what Sue and her team brings to the table has really helped us accomplish those goals.
Okay. I know how meticulous you are, and I think that the department's very lucky to have you in the position that you're in, because the work required is meticulous work. And just making sure that the next person that is in that special duty has a manual or has the ability. If this works, the bulletins work, and I know you have the other PD and the other manual
Yes.
that you're working with, that you don't end up walking into the situation that the next person doesn't walk into the situation that you walked into, which has nothing. So there's a blueprint for managing the department.
Absolutely. My strategic planning model is to build it to succeed, because I know that I'm going to be moving on one way or another. And so I built that into the modality at my office, and the next person that takes over me will have a really clear roadmap where we've been and where we're headed.
Okay, thanks. So I certainly don't have any problem with abandoning the Office Procedures Manual if it's of no use. I think for me the question is just there are a lot of bulletins listed here, and then a lot of materials by reference that you incorporate into your work. So to me the main concern is just how do you keep all that organized, and what's the system for ensuring that you have an up-to-date book of bulletins, and that you have the most up-to-date, search warrant manual, various other things. Because I could see there could be, people get busy all of a sudden. 4 years go by, no one's looked at it again, and half your bulletins are now outdated, and you don't have the most up-to-date stuff. So what's the system for dealing with that?
I'd be lying to you if I told you that wasn't a challenge. So it certainly is a challenge, and it's something that supervision at Arson needs to be very actively aware of, because those things do change on a regular basis. We have folks embedded into our allied agencies that will bring us that data as it changes on a periodic basis, although we do need to ask for that because it doesn't come naturally. But on an annual basis, I've asked my supervision and my senior investigator to review all of our policies and procedures, and each one of these policies and procedures will allude to some other document, and we just need to make a conscious effort to make sure that we have the most up-to-date manuals, especially from our outside agencies that apply to how we operate in our section. It is a challenge, and I think the way we're doing it is on an annual basis is focusing on the bulk of that work, and then ancillary, just be able to look out for the DA's office and our LOAs and make sure that we're in alignment with the other allied agencies. And as they come in, we try to update those things, make them available to our folks via email and hard copy, and then we also try to post it on the R drive so everyone has access to it.
Yeah, I mean, one easy way to try to deal with this would be, I think, an annual review is a good idea. But even if you just had a listing of, these are all the documents we refer to, and these are the current dates which they are, then at least you have an at-a-glance that whether it's the independent assessor or your successor that comes in, they can just look and see, and anybody can walk in and see, okay, what is our most current list? What's the most current version? And it's a 2-page document maybe that's, it's not a lot of work to keep it updated. But I would suggest you have that, and that way if anybody ever asks, it's really simple just to run off, say, here's a list, it's on the R drive, we can see what the most up-to-date is. Are we using the right manual? It's a very kind of, it's a summary of looking at it. I don't think it's too complicated a solution, but could we just recommend that that's what the approach would be going forward?
Absolutely, and if you know how my section works, we keep a lot of spreadsheets and databases, so I think I think we'll incorporate that. We do have something similar to that, but we'll add a couple of these other documents from the DA's office that currently aren't on that list. We do have a list that shows expiration dates and when we want to review them.
Yeah, just a really comprehensive list, and in part, it's not only for your own success in organization, but also, if something goes wrong and somebody has done something that is not in current policy, we have to be able to say, like, well, this is what the current policy is, and this is where you should have been, what you should have been doing, this is what you should have been looking at, and we also owe it to our members for them to have the most up-to-date reference manuals. So we should be distributing that to all of your staff to say, this is what the up-to-date stuff is. Make sure you're looking at the right things so that everybody's acting in policy, and that's a risk management piece as well. So, yeah, I think I'm totally fine with what you're proposing here to limit the manual. I would like I think it would be great if you would think about what that kind of summary sheet would look like and how you want to update it and whose job it is to keep it updated so that we have that.
I will produce that document. I think it's pretty much done, and
Great.
I will send it to Sue Single and make sure she has a copy of it in her office.
That's great. And then, handled, and it's not a lot of extra work on your end. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adopt the recommendation on this item. This is item 5.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Sorry, we're now moving to item 5C, verbal report by the Department on Standards of Cover.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chief Terrazas, Ms. Rafish, Ms. Gomez. My name is David Perez. I'm a battalion chief and currently assigned to be the commander of the planning section. I'm here today to give you a verbal update on the status of the Standards of Cover project. As I do that, I'll go back and just kind of review a little bit of what Standards of Cover is all about, how we get to it, why it's important, run through a timeline of where we are leading up to today and some future steps. So defined, the Standards of Cover is basically a document that when it's completed, it gives us a basis by which we can determine how we distribute our fixed and mobile resources. So fixed resources being fire stations and mobile resources being ambulances, fire engines, trucks, that kind of thing. It starts out with a self-assessment of our current abilities based on CAD data, fire stat maps, that kind of thing. And it also includes a community risk assessment. And then we also add into that what we believe would be our ideal response capability. And then taking those things through a collaborative effort, working with our stakeholders, we determine what would be the number and types of resources that should respond to any kind of an incident, how those resources should be staffed, and the amount of time it would take for those resources to arrive at any type of incident. So it's actually a fairly comprehensive document. And the purpose of it is that we now, once we have this document, we have a collaboratively derived metric-based document that gives us something concrete as to when we're asking for new fire stations, new resources, where we're putting those fire stations, what we're staffing the resources with. We have some solid data-based document that backs us up. So that's really the key purpose of the Standards of Cover project. Originally, we started work on this in April of 2014 when Public Safety Committee, jointly with Budget and Finance Committee, directed the CAO to develop an RFP. We started working on that right away, released an RFQ in July of 2014. But in August of that year, we were told to withdraw the RFQ. And that motion from Public Safety Committee came right at the time that the responses were coming in from the RFQ. That happened primarily, from what we can tell, because while we certainly intended to work collaboratively through the Standards of Cover process, we did not work so collaboratively through the RFQ process. We didn't think it was necessary. That was our mistake. And so Council District, or Public Safety Committee, requested that we withdraw the RFQ at that time and resubmit it with a more of a collaborative effort on the RFQ itself. Along those lines, Council District 11's office gave us a significant number of comments that they wanted to see incorporated into the new draft RFQ. We incorporated those. We also had some COA comments that were added later in 2015. In 2016, we met with UFLAC in their office, and at that time what they told us was that they wanted to refer the issue to IAFF headquarters for further review. And then in April, some of the planning section staff as well as some UFLAC board members attended a 3-day training session offered in the city of Burbank by the company that handles accreditation of fire departments and actually defines what the Standards of Cover process is. We went through a 3-day class on that, and that was really the last official contact that we've had. So where we are today is we're still awaiting that IAFF review and UFLAC's decision to move forward with the process, because without that and looking at the council motion, we really can't even develop the RFQ until we have all of our labor stakeholders involved. We currently are in version 10, which includes comments that have been made from UFLAC, from COA, and from Council of District 11's office that are waiting for review. So we've got the document ready to go at this point. We just need to bring the parties back together once they're ready to do so. Once we get that RFQ document finalized, where everybody is in agreement that we're ready to move forward, we need to send it back to Public Safety Committee for full discussion and review by them. And they've requested that the fire chief, UFLAC, COA, and industry experts weigh in at that time. They've also directed that once they approve it, it'll go to the full council. So this is going to require full council action to move it forward. Once we get the full council approval, then we'll release the RFQ and we'll be prepared to award and execute the contract. And that pretty much concludes my report. Any questions?
Who would like to start? Okay, thanks. I regret a little bit that we're doing this without the full commission. I think we probably will want to do this over again. So we'll consider this a dry run.
It looks good.
Because this is a matter of, I think, paramount importance for this commission. We're being asked annually to approve millions of dollars for new resources, which, yes, maybe tens of millions of dollars, which clearly we have shortages in our department that need to be met. But currently we are doing that without any clear roadmap for how those resources should be, which resources we should be bringing on, because we don't have a standards of cover. And so we're operating on just kind of gut right now, it seems like.
Well, we do it based on call load. We do look at call load and response time. So we do take some of this data. All this does is formalizes the process by which we use. Right now it's not quite so formal.
Yeah, so what are my understanding on standards of cover is that one of the big aspects that it does is actually set some goals for ourselves in terms of what our response time should look like and coverage. What are our current goals?
Well, right now, we tend to fall to the NFPA 1710 standard, which is to have it depends on the incident type, certain types of resources on scene within a certain number of minutes, X% of the time. I couldn't quote exactly what those are.
Yeah.
But
So they look at the NFPA standard. Now, the NFPA standard is an interesting one, because whenever I ask about the NFPA standard, what I'm told is that it's a guideline.
Yes.
And so what is frustrating for me is that when the guideline fits for certain allocations of resources, then that's what we're working towards. But when it's a guideline that doesn't necessarily fit with what people want, then it's just a guideline, and we don't need to meet it. And that's really where the standards of cover, I think, really comes in, is because we can actually make some definitive decisions about what we actually want our standards to be, rather than having guidelines which we adhere to when we feel like it. And that's what it feels like to me, is that we adhere to the guidelines when we feel like it. So I guess what I'm saying here is this is a really critical thing that we need to finish, and we've been working on this since 2014. How much longer is it going to be?
I don't have a clear answer for that, because really right now the ball is not in our court. We are ready to move forward, but we cannot move forward without the collaboration of all of our stakeholders. So we're waiting for that. I know that UFLAC has sent the matter to IAFF for review. I don't know what the status of that is. I know that COA had given us tentative approval to move forward back in 2015. But it's a slow process, and we do continue to move toward it. But right now, the ball's really not in my court.
So there was some consternation about accreditation. Can you talk to us? I didn't see anything about accreditation in your. And can you talk to us about what's the difference between a standards of cover and an accreditation, and how the two things are related?
Standards of cover is one small part of an accreditation process. Accreditation not only looks at standards of cover, it looks at a strategic plan. It validates the process by which we developed our standards of cover, by which we developed our strategic plan. There are approximately 10 different elements that they look at in accreditation, and so I don't know exactly all of them. I do know that the Commission on Fire Accreditation International, CFAI, is the organization that would come out and perform that accreditation survey. They are also the organization that writes the process for how to develop a standards of cover document. And so you can't get accredited without having a CFAI approved standards of cover.
So the standards of cover has to come first.
Yes,
before we can get an accreditation.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Would the accreditation be somehow integrated into a standards of cover RFQ?
I don't remember when we released it in 2014 if we included accreditation or not.
Would it even make sense to do that?
Step process.
Okay, so it's really so it may not even make sense to include an accreditation in an RFQ process.
I don't know if it would or not. It's possible that we could do it. Say that you have to tell the contractor that they have to get us through the standards of cover document and then walk us through the rest of the process as well. It would be a two-phase.
If I could add some comments to that. The standards of cover, there are 10 elements to self-accreditation. There is an organization that developed the system and coaches the various departments through the process. Of the 10 elements, the standards of cover is one of those 10.
Mm-hmm.
My recollection was that the RFQ didn't include self-accreditation information. Having discussed this multiple times with labor, UFLAC, most recently last Friday, I think we both agree that we want to work on this together. It is an important document. UFLAC would like us to work towards self-accreditation, which I want to do. To accomplish that for a department our size, we're talking about a significant budget ask in terms of staff dedicated for at least a year because it's an in-depth study. Self-accreditation doesn't mean that we're going to fix the elements that get assessed. It means that we're aware of them. Pasadena most recently and Anaheim have gone through that process. They've identified the deficiencies and they're working towards a plan to someday fix those deficiencies. My cursory look at the 10 elements of self-accreditation, I believe that we're either have met that standard or with staff time we could prove that we have been at or exceed that level. Standards of cover is a different element. It's much more in-depth. There's a lot more metrics. My thought moving forward with the change in leadership with UFLAC, I have to educate them on all the things that we've learned and try to collaborate with UFLAC and the COA in a manner so that there is agreement by all parties to move this forward. That's our challenge, and that's what we've been working towards. It has taken a long time, I agree. But we're not going to give up. I think there is I know there is consensus about the importance of this process in this document.
So what particularly are the snags that, I just want to know what particularly the snags, because this is, like you were saying, Commissioner, that we're approving budgets that are tens of millions of dollars, and we've decided to be a metric-driven department. How do we ensure that we're allocating resources appropriately? And I want to make sure that, we're working with labor and we're working with COA and council as well, but what are the snags?
Yeah, I think to get a specific answer to that, we need to talk to labor. Right now, they did submit a letter dated February 21st.
Just got that.
and I quickly read it. I think that, they point to in their letter the PA report, and there's some hesitancy to agree on another report. I think, though, through continued discussion and education, maybe we schedule some of the vendors to tell us more in-depthly what the process looks like to overcome that fear of that third-party report. I believe that through continued discussion and continued education of our stakeholders, we can move forward together.
Right, and if there's a third party doing the report, but they're working with all the other parties, how could it not be the outcome that we all want?
Well, I agree. And if you look at the standards of cover process, and I've looked at the proposals, part of the process is regular meetings with the department as they progress through their report. Perfect. And I have offered to and will continue to offer to our stakeholders that they're invited to our biweekly meetings when we discuss with the vendors how we're moving forward. I think it comes back to education of the process and to ensure that there's going to be continued involvement through each step.
Absolutely.
Just along the lines of what the snags are, it looks like from the letter, well, there's an old letter there that has to do with accreditation process, but I think we've established that the accreditation comes after the standards of cover.
Yes, sir.
So that actually shouldn't be a snag, and it remains. Seems like it remains one. The other thing here is, I think I'm not sure why the PA report would be confused with a standards of cover. My understanding, the PA report came out right when I was appointed to the commission, but the PA report seemed like a generalized, what are some things you could do differently as a fire department, whereas the standards of cover is a really specific analysis of actual incident types, response types, and what our coverage should look like. PA report opined on whether or not we should privatize, EMS. That's not part of standards of cover, is it?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay, so standards of cover wouldn't even talk about privatization or any of those boogeymen out there that that tend to, get people really worried about massive changes in our department.
That's correct.
Okay, so maybe you could just talk about what are some of the things that would be in a standards of cover, because you referred to them generally. Can you get specific?
Well, specifically, when you do the assessment of your current deployment model, it breaks down. There's like Chief Terrazas mentioned, it's a very in-depth. The book on how to do it's about a 2-inch book,
mm-hmm.
and but it looks at everything from how the city is set up, that we're a charter city, and what our boundaries are and our square, a lot of the demographics of the city. And then it goes into where we locate our stations and what resources we have in each station and what those resources are staffed with and what their response times are to various kinds of incidents. And then we look at it looks at the community, and it does very detailed community risk assessments for all of the communities within the city of Los Angeles. And it matches our response times and our resource deployment to those community risk assessments. And then basically, the one of the differences, a huge difference between, say, the PA consultant report, which in that report, there was the consultants coming in, as you said, and opining on what they think we should do or could do better. This is a consultant guiding us through the process, and we make those determinations as to what we think the standard should be, what we think the response time should be for given types of incidents, and how many resources should be there, and how those resources should be staffed. We make those decisions, not an outside consultant. The consultant just drives us through the process, and it's a very documentable process. So we have to look at, a lot of, when we get to this, we'll be asking fire stat section for all kinds of maps and displays showing what response times are like in each district of the city and where we're falling short of a projected standard and where we're meeting that projected standard. and what it takes to get an effective response force. What we will consider to be a full complement of resources to the scene with the full amount of staffing that we need to handle a certain type of incident. Each type of incident has a effective response force, and so we'll be looking at that too to see, okay, we're getting the right number of resources, but the staffing level's not there to accomplish the job. And that all leads towards building that metric-based document that we can then have some more solid grounding for when we go to council and ask for more resources or more stations or relocating stations. All of that would be included in a standards of cover document.
Is there, really quickly, is there a committee on the commission that are working on this?
I mean, at this point, it's an internal dialogue between, or an internal external dialogue, I guess, between the chief, the planning section, and the labor stakeholders.
Can we set that up?
I think we may want to wait for the president to be back for that conversation,
sure.
and then we can think about whether that would be an appropriate action. It looks like one of the sticking points here, going to the Commissioner Nimberg's question about what the snags are, is an internal versus an external. Can you talk about what that might look like, what those two options are? An internal process versus looks like a third-party process.
Well, we could do this as an internal process, but then it lacks the word I'm looking for. Sorry, excuse me. It lacks the credibility. If we do it ourselves, then anybody who disagrees with it is going to say, well, you just manipulated the numbers to do whatever you want. You can't really back up your position. Where if we do it with outside third-party help guiding us through the process, there's a lot more credibility to the document itself. And that's really all that lends. The manual that CFAI provides us on how to do a standards of cover makes it clear that a contractor is not required. But it does lead to the credibility issue.
And have any other departments of comparable size completed a standards of cover internally?
Of comparable size, I do not know. I know that we do have quite a few departments around us locally that have done it, but not to my knowledge, nothing quite to the size of the city of L.A. I don't know. I mean, there aren't that many metropolitan departments of our size, so I don't know what's going on outside of our local area.
Okay. And now I noticed that Anaheim did complete one internally. Anaheim comparable to LAFD. What's our size comparison there?
Not knowing exactly what Anaheim's size is, but I would guess we're probably at least 10 times their size.
Okay. So do you see that maybe, I mean, in their case, it's easier to complete it internal versus external?
Yes, sir. And I don't know if they
did
it internally either. They may have had a contractor as well. I don't know.
Okay, and cost-wise, time-wise, do you have any sense of what the difference in cost versus time would be versus an internal versus an external approach?
Well, if we go external, we're probably looking at close to $400,000 for a contractor.
And time, how long would it take?
We would probably set a timeline of approximately 1 year.
Okay.
We could also do it internally for a year, but we would definitely have to add a couple of captains to the planning section because the amount of workload that it would require. And so that now you're getting back up to at least, if not more than, the cost of a contractor.
And you'd still need some external consultants on that. You wouldn't be able to do that all entirely ourselves, right?
We would, at some point, we would need to be able to have somebody look at it and make sure that we did, in fact, meet the standard of what that CFAI establishes. And your concern, as you stated earlier, is that there could be a credibility gap if we were to focus on an internal process. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Rebecca? Yeah. What are you currently, so for allocating resources right now, what are you currently using?
We use FireStat data and call volume primarily. We look at response times to see where we could make a difference.
Okay. I mean, I think that the benefit I see of standards of cover, I mean, the population's exploding. You can look in the valley, and we're going to need probably a lot more resources currently than what we have already. And council has requested this, right, as well? Council wants the standards of cover so they can... What?
They've given us money in the budget to pay for standards of cover, and the department is fully supportive of this process.
Right. I think that it benefits everybody to get this, because I think that, you know, I just anecdotally I see you need more fire stations, you know, more.
Yes, ma'am. I agree.
Know, of everything. So I think that this could justify this when going to council, you know, for increasing the membership as well.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, given we have a shortage of commissioners today, you know, I think we should bring this back when we have a full commission. I think it would be helpful to have a more in-depth presentation, frankly, that goes into far greater detail on what the process of a standards of cover is, what the benefits of a standard of cover are, what some of the debates are that are going on right now. But I think at that point, when the rest of the commission is here, I think it's important that we as commissioners think about how we want to deal with resource requests without a standards of cover. And do we want to set a higher bar for what evidence is provided in order to justify additional resources and what kind of resources we get? I think it's time for us as a commission to draw a line here and say, listen, if we're going to spend scarce resources on important additions to our department, that we have more than a 2-line budget justification for those things. And you know, I for one, I want to see what the goals are that we're trying to meet when we come in and we ask for a new resource, and I want to see how those resources, what the analysis is, the in-depth analysis behind how those are the right resources. And until we agree on a standards of cover and get there, I think that's just what we're going to have to do is think about a far more in-depth process of thinking about what kind of resources are coming in that is transparent. Because right now it's not transparent at all. And you know, again, I think we should discuss that as a commission. I think the whole commission needs to be on the same page on this for this to be the right thing. You know, but we can't keep business as usual where it's just, you know, we have NFPA guidelines that we adhere to when we feel like it. It's, you know, so I guess with that we'll. Unless there's Dr. Hart, I think you have another comment.
Just one question. I understand the importance of having labor involved and what have you in terms of the discussions. You mentioned a community needs assessment. Who conducts that? Is that by way of the neighborhood councils? Is that by way of the, you know, city councilmanic districts? Or who actually, you know, determines what the community needs assessment actually is?
Well, the department would be the lead in conducting the assessment, but this is, again, labor is not the only stakeholder that's involved in this. So yes, the community, the neighborhood councils, the four geographic bureau advisory panels, all would have a voice. The elected council districts all would have a voice in helping us determine what that needs assessment would look like, and it's a very specific process that we would have to follow.
So why don't we plan for a revisit on this? Well, I'll talk to the commission president, but we can look at a revisit. What is this, February now? Maybe in a month, towards the end of March.
Yes, sir.
We can have it come back. But again, I think let's make it a written. I'd like to see a PowerPoint in advance next time, and I'd like it to be a far more in-depth explanation. If you'd like to include one of your vendors, feel free. But let's really dig into this and understand what it is that we're trying to do, why it's really important to do it, and what we're losing by not doing it. And as a commission, we got to think about what the alternatives are if this isn't going to move forward. But my feeling is that we can't keep doing it the way we're doing it, where we just sit around on a wing and a prayer, waiting for this thing to one day come back to us, and in the meantime, you know, we aren't verifying the data behind the resource allocation to make sure that that's what our city needs.
Yes.
So I'll look forward to seeing you again on this. Thank you for your hard work on this. I understand that this has been a long time coming. You're the third planning section that I've talked to about this, and hopefully we won't have to talk to a fourth one before it's done.
No, I hope not.
Okay. So that's a verbal report. We don't need a motion on that, so why don't we go ahead. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Council reminds me we do have a speaker on this. At this point, I will call up Freddie Escobar from United Firefighters of Los Angeles.
Good morning, Chief Terrazas, Fire Commissioner, Honorable Commission, and Command Staff. I'm Freddie Escobar. Sorry. Second Vice President of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, here to speak on the verbal report of standards. I've distributed copies of letter from UFLAC President Tony Gamboa regarding this important matter. The letter also includes an attachment with a letter that was written by former UFLAC President Frank Lima in April of 2015, nearly 2 years ago, regarding our position on this issue. As President Gamboa's letter clearly states, UFLAC supports having a process for a standard of cover for the LAFD. UFLAC just wants to be sure that it's done in the right way so that we produce a standard of cover document that helps our department improve and so that we create a system within the LAFD of constant improvement. A standard of cover should be seen as a continuous journey, not a destination. This means that this should be an ongoing process that evolves over time, adapts to new circumstances, and includes key LAFD personnel and stakeholders along the way. On behalf of UFLAC President Tony Gamboa and our dedicated members, thank you for your interest in this important issue, and thank you for carefully reviewing President Gamboa's letter, which has been distributed to everyone, and there's also copies in the rear. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, can I add a few comments to this?
Sure.
This is a good discussion. I will be brief. I don't think we can bring a vendor before the commission. I do think that we can access a fire department who has recently done a standards of cover. I think that would accomplish the same thing and keep us within the rules. In terms of how we move forward and how we restore, or in some cases bring back new resources, I want to assure this group that it's not based on a whim. We do have three factors. It is the call load, it is response time, and it's assessment of risk. The third one is the only one where there's an element of subjectivity, but the order of restoration has been based on call load. We're restoring the most active ones that have been closed, and we also look at the response time impact. Risk is an assessment that we run through my command staff. We've had planning weigh in as well. We look at brush risk. We look at density. We look at the number of hospitals. There's a lot of factors. But the decision's made on the totality of those three main categories because we cannot wait. We have to make a decision, and we had to have a baseline for making that decision. So until we get a standards of cover, that is our methodology in the restoration of resources.
Okay, all worth further discussion. The next time this comes up, there's a lot in there. Okay, we're going to move on now to the item 5D, verbal report on workers' compensation audit report. Thank you.
Good morning, Commission, Fire Chief Terrazas, Council, all in attendance. My name is Scott Quinn. Recently promoted Battalion Chief, assigned to Battalion 4A Platoon. Spent the last 3 years in risk management and endured the year-long audit that concluded in 2015. As a result of the audit, Fire Chief Terrazas in his office presented a response to the 11 findings that turned into 19 recommendations, of which 13 were priority A, 6 were a priority B. Nearly all have some level of implementation, several are near fulfillment. Risk management medical liaison focused on the priority A's, and with 3 of the recommendations, being priority B, are currently being evaluated and assessed for further implementation. Specifically, if you have them in front of you, they're 2.2, 2.3, and 8.1.
Okay. Yeah, we have nothing in front of us.
Okay. Really, what they are the farther-reaching recommendations that didn't really meet the priority or the organizational assessment that we felt we would really pursue after, at least not until we took care of the items that we could easily address internally, seek ones that are organizational, and then items that are requiring partnerships. 8.1 specifically addressed a safety management system. It's apparent in the air operations components that we have in the organization. We realize the benefits of this philosophy, but it isn't practical department-wide, so that is one of the priority Bs. We have addressed it causally by setting up a significant response team. We have after-action reports, and we now have a cadre of safety officers, all with the implementation of preventing future injuries or illnesses and overwhelmingly prevent injuries or illnesses from occurring in the first place. Risk management has met once with the City Council Subcommission, made a presentation to Nuri Martinez's group, which was received and filed. We were very prepared to make another presentation to full City Council, which was also received and filed, and had no further activity on it. Currently, injury and illness prevention was determined to be the key focus of the audit, with a minor reduction in overall work comp costs. Prevention and early detection has been implemented in several areas, with innovative approaches remain to be addressed. We've satisfied a great deal of this audit and have realized that it's a good roadmap to continue to improve the health and safety of our membership. MOU 23 has already been a contractual agreement for injury and illness prevention through health assessment. There's been some significant prevention as a result of that. Risk management is now in the position of making budgetary requests for new positions. We have reached the point where we are in need of some staffing and technical support to continue gathering and evaluating maturing and relative data to determine where we're headed to in the next phase. The Mayor's Executive Directive 18 will also summarily assess some of the things that are remaining to be completed in the audit. As I stated, the technical platform, we utilize a system called iBoss, which is a citywide data gathering system that was designed ultimately to manage and process members' claims, but wasn't originally designed to provide data. We have been meeting with third-party administrators and other city partners to start extracting that data to give us a performance on how we are doing and what the future looks like. As I've said previously, we are in the negotiating components for budgetary changes. And then in November 22nd of 2016, Risk Management with the Personal and Animal Welfare Committee and the Public Safety Committee outlining efforts to minimize delays and financial support for medical treatment for the members entering into the work comp arena. One of the benefits, or since I've been at Medical Liaison, we've made some sweeping changes, again, to highlight the prevention and reduce the overtime that somebody spends in work comp, which wasn't expressly identified in the audit, but is a component of it. We meet regularly with Medical Services Division, third-party administrators, City Workers' Comp Division, the City Attorney's Office, to review and evaluate members' claims, their experiences, and to minimize the time that they're out of the field. And we are now working towards a return-to-work program, which should also address some components within the audit. At this point, that concludes my verbal report, and available for any questions should you have some.
Commissioner?
I would like to have have you present to us with a written report so that we could actually know, we could look at and specifically see what you're talking about.
Certainly.
So I think that would help us.
Okay.
I do appreciate all the work that you're doing. You know, getting, this is a big issue. And it not only affects the members, it also affects, you know, the city budget. So we want to make sure that, and then I also want to talk about the data, you know, that you're collecting, and how, is it going to be done through FireStat?
We've been involved in FireStat as a risk management section. The specific work comp numbers have not specifically been addressed. We're looking more organizationally and operationally to assess a few items. We as risk management have looked at the data. We've met with Gartner. We've presented our concerns with the data that we have available. It isn't presenting a clear picture that gives us direction. Some of the data is only 2 years old. It doesn't send enough of an evaluating trend to decide whether we're trending up or down. Past performances, we've been fairly consistent as a fire department. Costs traditionally go up as they do in our own lives, where cost of treatment is the factor that increases our work comp budget.
Right. Okay, so
yeah. So why don't we go ahead and agendize this for first meeting in April. Give you a little bit of time to put something together. Congratulations on the promotion, by the way. If I would just build on, I think we're thinking about what we're specifically interested in, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, so Commissioner, feel free to jump in if I get this off. But appreciate there was a big audit, and there's a bunch of sections you threw around, which I think went over our. We don't have those in front of us, so it's hard for us to know what we're talking about. I think the main thing that we're interested in as a commission, though, is what are the problem areas that we're focused on? What does the data tell us about those problem areas? Where are we having our major workers' comp issues still? Where have we seen improvement over time? Where are we not seeing improvement? What are some of the initiatives you're taking on right now to handle some of those things? And what are the challenges that remain? Am I saying that about right? But being able to see some, I think we're less interested in generic compliance with an audit and more interested in the practical implications of what we got to do with workers' comp and how we're managing our workers' comp risk, which you mentioned, and our workers' comp costs there. So I would put it in that lens, and then next time you come back in April, you can think about what you need to do for a second meeting of April sometime in that time frame, though. I think that's really what we're hoping to look at.
Certainly.
Does that make sense?
One real brief example to show that we are working towards that is we do know that backs are leading injury. Recently, we partnered with the In-Service Training Section, and they implemented a training component on our learning management system for all members to be aware of the importance of safe lifting techniques. So it's hit on several fronts. The verbal report I thought was specific for the audit components. We'll give you a more detailed report.
That's fine. So we'll get there. Okay. Thank you for your work on this. We'll look forward to seeing you again in 6 to 8 weeks.
Certainly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. We have no comments on this. We have no public comment in our public comment. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.